All right, all right. We are ready to rock, and we are recording. So, I'm Morgan Field for those of you who are following the brand Epic Sexy You. I'm the founder. I am the author of the Amazon bestseller Epic Sexy You that really talks about giving you all the different life hacks to really create a life that you absolutely love, 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 love to live. I'm a life coach. I'm an intuitive. And about 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, I went vegan. And it was because I accidentally uncovered that I have a ton of food allergies or sensitivities. And it had created all of these autoimmune diseases for myself that I didn't even know were all tied together. And long story short, one of the things that Erin and I, which I'll introduce her, let her introduce herself in a second, but one of the reasons that we decided to get together and start doing this is that we both have journeys where we were living in our bodies very unconsciously. And for me, it was, there were many, many instances where I was creating myself, and Erin and I were just talking about this before we hit record, but I was creating problems for myself without even realizing that I was doing it, whether it was my mind creating problems, which we'll talk about today, or whether it was the things I was putting into my body that was causing these things to pop up that appeared to be autoimmune diseases, but actually it was just inflammation because my body was sending me messages like, stop putting that in my body, which, you, Erin, have had as well. So Erin's one of my besties. We've known each other for how many years now?
Since 2004 is when we started becoming close. I knew of you and you were like an acquaintance before that, but yeah, it's been about 17 years.
I ask Erin because Erin is like the Rain Man and she can remember everything. So I would be like, like 15 years. And she would be very specific, as you knew. She was like, well, we knew each other before then, or I knew of you. But in 2004 was when we became good friends. So you'll also understand too that Erin's like an epic brainiac. So as you start to follow this series that we're gonna do together, we just have a ton of fun together, and we thought it'd be really cool to share the insights and the inspiration, learn from some of our own mistakes, learn from some of our own ahas and epiphanies. And one of the things that I love about our friendship and just about people that I love to surround myself with is the humility and humor that we're able to have in the awakenings that have really allowed us to step into bodies we love being in. And one of the things I was talking about earlier too with the whole, I went vegan, and it was kind of, it's not because I think everyone should go vegan. It's just what really works for my body because of all of the things I'm really sensitive to. But one of the things that happened is when I did that, I stopped focusing on, which we'll do an episode that's all about this at a later point, but just to give you guys reference point, I stopped focusing on creating a strong body because I was just thinking about the way that I wanted to feel and look. And so for the longest time, until Erin and I recently have started getting into like this next level journey of our bodies, for the longest time I was just in this body that I loved being in, and it felt really good, but it wasn't strong. And so Erin and I have been on a journey together where we've been creating strong minds, strong bodies, and really allowing ourselves to define sexy in a new way for ourselves, which is like being really, really strong in our bodies as well. So, and I'm so excited about what we're going to talk about today. But first, Erin, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself as well?
Hey, so I'm Erin. Like Morgan said, I am a nerd and lover of many things scientific. Lately, I've been finding myself fascinated with the wind patterns on Earth. So in my radar app, I keep watching all of the layers of the wind patterns in the Atlantic and Pacific. So if you want to talk to me about that at a later date and time, I'm happy to do so. I'm all about jet streams. So a little bit about me. Yes, I've known Morgan since I believe it was a birthday party in early July 2004. So I do love dates. I've been a nurse for 13 years. It's a huge passion of mine. I love taking care of people. I worked in pediatrics and critical care for many years, and it's been extremely rewarding, hard and emotional, but rewarding. I'm a full-time working mom and wife, and to a handsome man who's a police officer, and a sweet little 2-year-old who is full of lots of sass and energy. So I'm a recovering perfectionist and an aspiring good enoughist. I have been working for probably the past decade on freeing myself of the shackles that fear and food has placed on me in the first 2 decades of my life. And like Morgan was saying, I actually do have an autoimmune disease. I have celiac disease. So without knowing it for about 28 years, my body was completely ravaged by eating gluten without me knowing it. So I had a whole host of problems that I just had no clue. And once I found out and eliminated it, it changed my world. And so the fear thing, that's just, a bunch of stuff, culturally, growing up, stories, all that jazz, that I think we all kind of have imprinted upon us our whole life, and learning how to look at things a different way, just so I can nerd out another way. I love this quote, and I saw it and was reminded of it last night when I was watching Star Wars with my son. But part of the whole journey with the food and the fear and what we kind of get ourselves, I think, wrapped up in is these truths we tell ourselves. And, a lot of times they're confabulations or lies told honestly, and we really believe them. And I'll never forget the first time you told me, you were like, that sounds like a story. And I was super offended because I was like, what do you mean that's a story? That is real. So I love from Star Wars, I think there's actually a great amount of wisdom that you can learn from the Jedi. And that the light side of the Force. But Obi-Wan tells Luke Skywalker when his truth is challenged, and he's super offended by it, and he's like, you're lying. And Obi-Wan had said to him, Luke, you're going to find that many of the truths that we cling to depend greatly on our own point of view. So I think you and I are trying to break through those and figure out through our own filters what those mean and what they mean for other people, or help other people figure it out.
I love that. It's such a good point too. And it's a great segue into our topic today, because earlier when we were trying to pick, where do we want to start these episodes, what's going to be our first piece? Cause we have so many things we want to share. And one of the things that we decided, it just felt right, was to start with the avatar of the comfy slob, because everyone has a comfy slob, and it's really getting in your way of your dream chasing, creating a body you love being in. So we're going to play with that a little bit today. And one of the things I love about the quote that you just said and how it ties in so well to comfy slob is comfy slob has a lot of stories that avatar tells you. And I'm going to use the language that she tells you, just because I'm talking about my comfy slob or Erin's, right? So that but for anyone who's watching who's a guy, so you his, there's something really powerful that comfy slob does also, that she creates this little cocoon around you of shame if anyone points out that you're being her. So if you read the book, right, Epic Sexy You, one of the places in the book, actually, I think there's a section called Comfy Slob. And
page 141.
Yeah. Okay. So, and so so on page 141, Erin always jokes, and it's true. She's like, I'm the OG comfy slob, because in that was that moment where, tell me a little bit about that moment, since page 141 is in your honor. Tell us a little bit about that awakening that you had to introduce our audience to their own comfy slob.
So what's funny about that is I'm actually sitting in my dining room in the exact same chair that I was sitting in when we were here, and I looked at you and was like, why didn't anyone tell me I turned into such a slob? And all my clothes are from Target. And so I guess, it was funny because I had known something, and this was probably back it had been right after we purchased our house. We had been married for probably a year and a half, 2 years. I had put on weight, and I wasn't really trying to not put on weight, but I wasn't trying to put on weight. And I had a bunch of people at work, because I had now been married for a year, who started asking me, Erin, are you pregnant? Erin, are you pregnant? Hey, are you pregnant? And I would get super offended. And I remember writing a big rant about it on Facebook because I was offended by the fact that something so private, someone would be asking me what my reproductive plans were, just knowing that so many people have so many issues. So that subject seems very sacred for me. However, what everyone was unintentionally trying to tell me was like, girl, you are putting on weight and we can see it. And it looks like it's in the form of a baby. And we're hoping it's a baby. And then I just kept getting pissed at everyone. It was like, it's not a baby, and it took me so long to like realize like they weren't being jerks. I just wasn't taking the hint. So, c'est la vie. It happens. And I think that like looking back at it, and we just talked about this before we hit record, is that for me, like at first I was super pissed at Comfy Slob because I was like, how did I get here? Like what happened? Like I just stopped paying attention. And then I was in this place and then I was mad because you had brought up like all the avatars and I was like, screw this bitch. Like, what is she doing here? You know what I mean? But like when I really, really thought harder about it, it's like, we talked about it before we hit record. For me, I became more compassionate around it because yes, she created a cocoon, that's for sure. And what she had started doing was creating a protective cocoon for me against my perfectionista avatar, who is like a ruthless, no holds barred, like do it perfect the first time or you're just a bag of shit. And so I think she was more like my protective big sister of like, you don't need social norms and constraints to tell you who you are, or what you do, or what you dress, or blah, 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 which was great and wonderful. And I always had kind of functioned like that. Like I wasn't a girl who wore makeup and got super fancy for the bars or out. I was just kind of like doing my own thing all the time, which was great when I was like, you put it in the book, like that's more your comfort goddess. Like I was like rooted in love. I loved who I was comfortable in that. But Comfy Slob was not the case. That was like layers and layers of perfection or of protection from perfection, which is rooted in shame. It was, I think, a lot of protection and padding against vulnerable situations. I was now newly married and, that was an unknown scary thing. Like, hey, we're in this commitment forever. We bought a house. That's a scary commitment as well. And so I had what my husband had diagnosed me with, which is EOWS, or end of the world syndrome. So I would tell myself, which we can do a whole episode on EOWS. So I like had just, I think, and then, started protecting myself from those vulnerabilities with Comfy Slob. And then I got into a position where I was like, but I don't want to be here. I don't like being here. But didn't really know how to get myself out.
Yeah. And so what I'm hearing you say, and that's why I think that piece justified its own section in the book, right? Because I do talk about avatars in the book, and yet that one is such a powerful one that it has its own section.
Oh yeah.
The piece around Comfy Slob is legitimately meeting one of your needs, which usually is for certainty. There's some safety and security that's being met by Comfy Slob, right? If, I remember at that time, when, even just like when you're changing your name, that changed a lot energetically for you, or when you're getting married or when you're buying a house, there's so much uncertainty in a lot of those elements that we can often create certainty in, guaranteeing ourselves to stay in our comfort zone, but we're not consciously doing it, right? So like, there's a lot of safety when you're in your comfort zone, which is usually
for sure.
For my Comfy Slob, it's my couch,
right?
And like, we'll talk in a minute about how to identify what your Comfy Slob looks like and how to identify when you're experiencing it, because all this is really about is the intention in all of in us sharing this is to breed awareness, so that you can call yourself out on being a Comfy Slob, not with shame or judgment. It's just so that you can consciously utilize when you're going to be in Comfy Slob. So what I love about what you're saying is there's nothing wrong with Comfy Slob, and it's loving on Comfy Slob and saying, hey, you're protecting me from something. I actually see a lot of women, I work with women all the time, where when they're in their comfy slob avatar, they're actually cocooning themselves and protecting themselves from having to get into the arena of love. And what a beautiful excuse, right? Like, oh, right. I'll date when, whether it's this 5 pounds or 100 pounds, whether, you know, because comfy slob shows up in different ways for all of us. For me, it's more like I may not shower or put on makeup, you know, and that could be more, and like I'm sitting on my couch and I'm doing jack and shit and I'm just wearing like comfy clothes. That comfort goddess, totally different, right? Like she's going to lay by the pool and she's going to be in her swimsuit and she's like regal and luxurious. So the important thing of how to leverage comfy slob and why this is so important is to know that you can use, like I can consciously say, I don't feel that great today. I'm going to let comfy slob sit on the couch.
Right.
No judgment, no shame. And that's where, when we start to really give ourselves permission to say, here's when you're in the game. Go on, comfy slob. I don't feel good. I'm gonna give myself permission not to shower or, you know, get off this couch. I'm gonna watch movies. I'm gonna watch rom-coms. I'm gonna cry. It's gonna be great, you know, versus oftentimes what's happening is our avatars like comfy slob are actually keeping us from our greatness. And when you want to be in a body that you really love being in, and your comfy slob is telling you things like, sit on this couch. You don't need to work out. Like you can do that tomorrow, you know? And also what I love about the story that you shared, and I think it's such a beautiful example, is I remember that moment when you're like, why didn't anyone tell me I became a slob? I think you were even like, why didn't anyone tell me I'm a fucking fat slob or something? Like you were just like,
probably, yeah.
And you were but also you just had such a sense of humor about it. You're like, nah. And
totally.
What's funny is that's such a juxtaposition of what was actually happening, because people were asking you if you're pregnant.
Oh yeah, they were trying to tell me. They were like,
But you know, but in a way, but you know, but society assumes you get married, like that must be what's happening. So,
oh, totally. I was a year into getting married, so that's exactly what's next in line.
So what's interesting is also, I mean, and you and I have always had a very honest, loving, open, funny friendship, right? And when I say funny, like I could be sarcastic, I could be like, I could tell you, okay, you're kind of putting on some pounds, what's going on? And yet what happens is that sometimes other people around us, out of love, they may not say something, or they may think you're being aware of what's going on. And, you know, and so what's also cool is you can, as you become more aware of your comfy slob, as you identify for yourself, okay, I am consciously in comfy slob right now. Do I want to be in this right now or not? Is this serving me or is it not? Who could I put in instead? And also telling your friends to mirror back when you're being a comfy slob.
Right.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Like if you know that I have to do, like even, you know, I messaged you today and I was like, stop ghosting me, because I knew that there's, you know, that you were ignoring, you know, like you're avoiding stepping into more greatness. And so that's the thing is when we can identify. So, and the thing I love about your story is that you had to identify her first.
Yeah, for sure. For sure I did. And it's funny because what you're talking about, like for me, you know, comfy slob, I'm still figuring out what ways she shows up, you know, which is awesome.
Sneaky.
Because then I can put her, because she's sneaky, you know, she's super sneaky, which is, you know, I have a brain that functions in a certain way, and so does she, and sometimes she's smarter than me, and it's like, damn it, she got out. Which is fun though too, because it's like a game. But like for me, comfy slob became not only clothes from Target, and there's nothing wrong with clothes from Target. Target's got some cute stuff. I mean, I've got a shirt on from Target right now, but the problem was that was like my everyday uniform became that kind of stuff. And so, you know, there was probably a story in there that like, I wasn't worth anything nice because of the way I didn't like the way I looked, you know, or worth anything with any sort of money. And I was probably also, I mean, I knew I had gained weight, so waiting to get back into clothes that were smaller. So I wasn't going to spend money on bigger clothes. And for a lot of people, they'd say, oh, I wasn't that big, but for me and my build, it was, and I wasn't comfortable. My comfy slob shows up when all of her clothes turn black and shades of gray. No colors, doesn't want to be seen, you know, doesn't want to stand out. And I used to be such a like color person, you know, so that I recognize that. Comfy Slob wants to wear glasses all the time. And I love my glasses. I used to love wearing them to work all the time because it was an extra shield against any sort of body fluids. So that was great. But then the nice thing about wearing your glasses is it's very easy to talk yourself out of like, well, I got my glasses on and you can't work out with your glasses because then they'll get sweaty and foggy and it's too late in the day to put in contacts because you wouldn't want to waste a pair of contacts for half a day. So it's like I would find all these things like that. And you know what? One of the things that I kind of like jolted at was I love stores like Athleta. You know, I love Lululemon. I love, you know, some stuff from Lucy or like Zella. And all that athletic stuff. You know, I was a competitive athlete growing up, playing volleyball, and I played volleyball in college and everything like that. So like, it's not like I wasn't athletic, but I would buy, and I loved yoga and everything like that. But I would be buying all these clothes and telling myself the when. So I would buy these clothes and it was like a carrot on a stick. Well, just buy it because it's comfortable and it's adorable, and when you work out you're already going to have it. And then I remember reading something where it was talking about how like this type of clothing is categorized as athleisure, so it's literally just clothes that you're supposed to lay around and be comfortable in. And I was like, what? I don't want to buy these for athleisure. Like, Comfy Slob, now you're working on everybody's comfy slobs with your marketing. We're going to the gym. So yeah, I'm still trying to identify ways she shows up. For me too, it might be not showering. Now I don't wash my hair daily because it's curly and I'm working on like the no poo thing. But that's a thing for me too. Or like not putting on any makeup, not like it's okay to give your face a break, but yeah, it was just like finding that fine line between being comfortable and loving the skin that you're in and not giving a fuck.
Yeah, and I think that's a really fine line that it is totally worth mentioning, because so my Comfy Slob has gotten really smart and tells me things like, you don't need to work out, you already look beautiful, you know? And that actually was the danger.
Yeah.
Comfy Slob was a part of vegan weak sauce. So because what happened is sometimes we buy into that sexy is a look, right? Yeah. And it's not. Now that I understand the intricacy of sexy, now that I feel genuinely, truly sexy and absolutely love myself and every fiber of my being, including physically, I realize, and you and I have talked about this a lot, but I realize that in loving myself, it's actually in making, it's that desire to want to be strong, to want to have, it's a totally different type of mentality that I need to look a certain way. And so what happened when I found the lifestyle that fit my body, again, everyone's body is very different. Some people, you know, it's like there is no one size fits all. That's something I see all the time. I studied holistic nutrition. So people come to me a lot asking me questions like, what should I do? And I'm like, the only way I would know is to like actually do logging with you and assess what's inflaming your body and what's not. Because oftentimes what we think is disease or what we think is obesity is inflammation. And I see it.
Oh yeah.
So what I thought was, you know, I was 35 pounds overweight. So I just thought I was overweight, and I thought that I had fibromyalgia and sinusitis and arthritis and a slew of other things, chronic fatigue, and, you know, and so what actually was happening, I had arthritis, I already said that, anyways, but what was actually happening too then is when I found the food lifestyle, the nourishment lifestyle that works for me, I lost the weight, all of those diseases went away, and then I looked the way that I'd always envisioned I would look when, you know, the dream body that I wanted. But because nutrition and nourishment is like 80% of the way that you physically look,
Oh yeah.
So, it's that quote where, how big or small you are has to do with what you put in your body, and how tight and or loose you are has to do with, what working out. And so what happened is I got to the point where I just didn't work out for a really long period of time. And people would always look at me because I would always be wearing my yoga clothes. They'd be like, oh my God, girl, you work out all the time. And I'm like, yeah, so that's stories of other people and buying into my own crap. And I'll never forget, I did the photo shoot for the book cover, and we did that, not only the shoot for the cover of the book, but because I had an epic photographer that I fucking love to death, I also was like, hey, let's do some other stuff since you're here with me anyways. And I remember looking back at the pictures, and I was lean, but you could see just like, this was just dangling. There was, and I just remember looking at it being like, oh my gosh, I'm not strong. It was like, it was, I had to see how, and then I started to be like, okay, well, let me see if I could do push-ups. Cause it was like, my mind was, Comfy Slob was trying to negotiate. No, you are strong. You're strong. You don't need to work out. Do a push-up. Yeah. And I tried to do a push-up, and I think I remember messaging you, like I couldn't do a push-up, and I'm like, right, holy crap. So again, our Comfy Slob is sneaky, sneaky, sneaky in how it, like, what is actually telling you that's going to stop you from putting in the work, the W, that you actually need to do in order to feel the way you want to feel, look the way you want to look, and to be strong. And what happens is, when you're physically strong, it helps strengthen your mind as well. And also, when you commit to yourself to do the work, to eat clean and to do the workouts, what ends up happening is you're fighting against your Comfy Slob, you're breaking old patterns, and you're doing that all through the mind.
Oh, I got to put her on the bench all the time. She's always trying to get into the game. Yeah, all the time, constantly. For sure, I had to, for me, and especially being a mom, what happens is, and I don't know if this is Comfy Slob or if it's some other dick of an avatar coming through, but it's like, I used to get up early in the morning, I'm working full time. I got this little one, he's boundless energy. And I think so many, not only people without children who are busy, but, women with children, you hear like, there's laundry to do. There's, you could be cleaning the sink. You could be doing the dishes. You could be cooking. You could be doing all of these other things, catching up on whatever, or catching up on your shows. You don't have time for working out. And so I remember I'd get up early because I knew that I needed time by myself in the morning before anyone else in the house woke up, before I went to work, so I could drink my coffee. And what I figured out over time is that I'd be sitting there, I'd be drinking my coffee, and I'd usually be scrolling on some type of social media like Instagram or whatever, or my college roommate would call in the morning. She lives on Florida time. So we'd be talking, and I would always I wanted to work out. I would talk about it in my head all the time and beat myself up about not working out, but I'd talk myself out of having the time. And it was when I was sitting on the couch and I had a cup of coffee in my hand, I'm on the phone with her, and I'm like, blah, blah, blah. I don't have time. I'm like ragging about my husband. I'm like, he's got time, to do whatever he wants. He just has got to be intentional about it. And, blah, blah, blah. I make sure that I have time to myself so that I don't feel overburdened, because I was in this journey of like trying to figure out what I needed to be a better mom and a better wife and just a better me. And I'm like, kind of getting all self-righteous about it. And I'm like, I wake up early every morning, like for an hour, to make sure I've got all this time. And I remember my eyes getting wide on the phone and telling her, and I was like, oh my God, Missy, I have 7 hours a week to work out. And she was like, oh damn, you just called yourself out. So it was like Comfy Slob. That's the other way my Comfy Slob shows up. How does Comfy Slob shows up? She wants not only one cup of coffee in the morning while she's relaxing and starting her day. She wants a second cup, and then she wants a third cup. And all of a sudden, an hour and a half has gone by. And have I done the dishes? No. Have I folded the laundry? No. Have I done anything to improve my body, mind, or soul? No, I actually haven't. So it was like when that light bulb went off, I got to take her and be like, love you, girl. Back on the couch, go back on your bench / couch or wherever, thanks. But like, I gotta do this. So, you know, that was a big way she was showing up. And I think that's a big way that she shows up for people. So, you know, I think it's that what you're saying, being intentional about how I choose my time. Like now the majority of the time I'm getting in a workout and I'm making intentional choices. Does that mean I don't scroll on social media? No, it doesn't. But like when you're saying you're in control of when you want to put her in the game or not, you know, that's like now I can give myself permission to like try to lay down and take a nap during my son's nap if I'm off or on a weekend, instead of being like, oh, I got all these things to do, you know? No one's giving me a trophy for how many times I get the dishes done. You know, if I want to watch Supernatural, I watch an episode of that. I mean, last weekend, now usually it was not uncommon. I'd stay in pajamas on my days off, you know, or whatever, or like, you know, comfy athleisure clothes. Now it's pretty uncommon if I don't have a pair of jeans and like something on, you know, like where it's just more, that's like more of my uniform. But last Sunday, I mean, I had pajamas on. I just stayed in my pajama pants and a tank top all day and I had no regrets. But I didn't feel bad about it because it's like, it's that one time, you know, it's like, because I'm in control of it.
Also, like there's something really nice about being comfy slob. That's why it's almost like it becomes an addiction because it is so nice. Like comfy slob takes no responsibility for anything. Comfy slob, you know, has excuses for days, and comfy slob just wants to be comfortable in your comfort zone, not stretching you, you know, and like, in a way it's a need, you know, comfort is a need that we do have. So we need to honor it. We need to meet it. It's just, how is it serving you? When can it serve you? And when does it become something where this is no longer serving me anymore? And I think that's the thing about being really conscious about it is always asking yourself, okay, is comfy slob present or I mean, your comfy slob is present in everyone's life. So asking yourself consciously for anyone listening is, how is comfy slob present in my life? Mm-hmm. How is comfy slob getting in the way of some of the things that I want? And like you said, comfy slob will tell you all the time that you don't have time. And it's all, and you had a really great reframe for this that I always use. Comfy slob always tells me I deserve, or like, this is how sneaky mine is, because she knows how high vibe I am. My comfy slob's like, girl, you deserve to just like sit on the couch and do nothing all day long. Now, mind you, I mean, I'm not a person who will ever be stuck in comfy slob because I have so much energy that like, I love being out. Like I love living. I live living too much. However, she's sneaky and she knows that. So she's like, girl, what you really need today is you need to live on that couch and just like relax and binge on Netflix or, you know, and so I just need to be really conscious of, is this what I'm going to be doing in this moment? And so this whole deserving thing, I flipped based on one of the things you had said, right? Where like, if I am at my old place when I was living in Chicago and I had an elevator, right? And I would say, okay, you know, you deserve a rest, you know, go up that elevator. And then I'd be like, yeah, or do I deserve a nice ass? Okay. Comfy slob. I deserve a nice ass and nice legs. I'm going to walk up it. So sometimes you just have to understand who's saying it, right? Is it your self-love goddess saying that? Or is it comfy slob? And sometimes comfy slob will learn what it needs to tell you to get you to be safe and comfortable and not do what you're saying that you're going to do.
Yeah, I think that what's really helped me with comfy slob too, and I'm going to touch on this in a second, because I just had this thought pop into my head, but like asking comfy slob, like trying to figure out like, what are you trying to protect me from?
Yes. Yeah.
And then if I figure it out, like, I'm like, all right, why you want me to sit here in my sweatpants? Like, or, you know, what are you so afraid about me working out for? And usually, like I had said, it's protecting me against Perfectionista or someone else. So for me, like, you know, and she holds me back in a different way. But like for me, like being a competitive athlete and playing volleyball, like I avoided playing any sort of volleyball for years after I was done with college, because I knew that stepping out on the court on that day, however many years after I was done, I wasn't going to be playing at the same caliber. And that was such a mind fuck for me because I was used to myself being at a certain level. And so it was really, really hard. And then it was funny because once I actually did it, like I got back into it. Like, was I at collegiate level? No, but all of a sudden I was being asked to be on competitive co-ed teams and playing with men on a men's net. And I'm a 5'8" girl, you know what I mean? So it was like, it wasn't that scary. But, you know, Comfy Slob holding me back from being bashed by Perfectionista and being like, you suck. You're not where you were. You're not whatever. So if I figure out what she's trying to keep me safe or avoid for me, then it's like, oh, that's actually not so scary. I can move through it. And I think like a big thing for people with food, and this has actually always worked in my favor, is like when people change what they eat, you know? So like they may want to change the way that they eat, but their Comfy Slob might be holding them back. And it's like, well, what are you afraid of? Like, what are you afraid of, or what are you avoiding? Well, for a lot of people, it's the criticism of them changing their patterns. And I think you probably experience this a lot. I mean, you were eating anything. Like you were eating meat, you were eating dairy, you were eating gluten. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, and a lot of people, when they start cutting those out, what happens, you start getting the critics and the eye rollers and like, oh, you're one of those people again. They're afraid of not being able to go out to restaurants and like, you know, hanging out with people and like eating with people. For me, I've been a vegetarian since I was 12. So people have been rolling their eyes at me since 1994. So like I'm used to it now, you know what I mean? Like I was a vegetarian before it was cool to be a vegetarian. So before there were so many options, it was like, you know, you just went to do it. And then when I cut out gluten, for the celiac disease, like, I mean, that was a no-brainer. No one's ever really rolled their eyes at me. They have not rolled their eyes at me once they found out that it was like, hey, no, this is an actual autoimmune disorder. But like, I've got a lot more confidence surrounding my choices in food.
Yeah.
And a lot of the vegetarianism, I got sick a lot, but that was really fueled by a love for animals and a, you know, contempt for how ill I got because of contamination of meat. But I was also immunocompromised with the celiac disease. So like someone who ate the same thing as me wouldn't have gotten as sick. But a lot of it had to do with animals. And so it's funny because as I got older, Comfy Slob has probably snuck in a little bit that I'm more like, oh, it's for health reasons instead of also for like, it's actually an animal cruelty thing for me. You know what I mean? So like, I'm even still figuring out where Comfy Slob is sliding in, and making sure maybe I'm not as strong in my convictions about things. So I think, you know,
yeah,
she sneaks in on the food issues too. It's not even just, it's any sort of lifestyle change.
That's huge. So around the same time that I became vegan, I also quit smoking cigarettes and I quit drinking. So I basically went from like the world's hottest mess ever, which earlier Erin mentioned, she likes to take care of people. I think that's why we were friends before, because I was like the biggest fucking hot mess on the planet. Which is also why I need to ask Erin for dates and stuff, because I was always drunk and blacked out. I don't remember anything for the majority of the beginning of our friendship. And so I also talk about that in the book and that whole journey. So Erin's, you know, a recovering perfectionista, and I'm a recovering, you know, alcoholic and perfectionista and all sorts of, I'm a recovering hot mess. And so what was really interesting was it was like awakening. I don't know how else to describe it. It was just, it literally was like a switch went off and I finally was like, I'm done feeling crappy. I'm just done. And I made choices, consciously started making choices that I didn't realize. And you just mentioned this. I didn't realize how much pushback I was going to get from the people that I was around.
Oh, yeah. Diet makes people very uncomfortable.
Yes. And one of the things is, so I decided when I quit drinking that I was going to do it like 7 to 14 days before I went on an all expense paid trip to, so the company I used to work at, they would do these all expense paid trips once a year that you could win. I would win them and I would bring Erin. She was always my guest.
We had a great time.
We did. And usually I was like totally drunk. And I think one day she took a picture of me passed out with a hamburger because I was being mean to her. And so she like, you know, she was paying me back a little bit. And I
had brought her back Ray-Ban sunglasses and she yelled at me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's read the book. You'll see about spicy McChicken. Yes.
That's fine. I got drunk the next night and cried about being ugly.
Yeah. No, so that was before I quit drinking. So that was the year before I quit drinking. And then the year that I decided to quit drinking, I went on this trip. And now, mind you, so I've quit drinking, I quit smoking, and I've changed my food intake. Like it was like, I was like a whole new person. And, what ended up happening is people were shaming me for not drinking. Like, oh, who do you think you are? And oh, you're judging me. And so
they were so bad.
It was so interesting. I mean, people who I'd been friends with, I was at the company for 8 years. So all these people who I'd known forever I'm thinking people were going to be like, yeah, go you, that's amazing. And that didn't happen. And I even remember some of the friends that were in the inner circle at the time that had been friends with for a really long time, that I used to go drinking with, that I didn't realize how much that was going to cause triggers to them that I was changing. And I think that's something, so I'm really glad you brought this up. I think it's something that as you learn to consciously explore Comfy Slob, you're going to realize that we are the average of the 5 people we spend our most time with, whether that's your coworkers, your family, or friends. So when we make changes, it triggers other people around us. And also that it triggers ourselves. So here's what's really interesting. When you ask the question about what is your Comfy Slob protecting you from? I feel like in the past, Comfy Slob was protecting me from, so before I quit drinking and quit eating all that, Comfy Slob was protecting me from the pain.
Yeah.
Right? It was like, just numb it. It's easier. Just take that route, numb it. So some people numb with food. I numbed with alcohol or really shitty relationships. Because if I date people that have
shopping.
Yeah, everyone has something, and so that's the whole thing. Comfy Slob tends to help you find like the path of least resistance, and you'll numb out. And so the amount of pain that I had to go through, that crucible that I had to go through in order to get to the other side of the tunnel of self-love. I mean, essentially starting from having no self-worth to loving myself more than I ever thought was humanly possible, and loving life more than I ever thought was humanly possible. And yet Comfy Slob was trying to protect me from having to go in through the crucible, right? Like through the fire, which is often, that is the fear zone. It's like that quote is the treasures that you seek are in the cave that you most fear to enter into, right? And so now what's happening with Comfy Slob, and when I ask, because I'm noticing she's kicking up again recently, like today. Like right now I have, I'm having a party from the top up, and then I've got sweatpants and leopard print slippers. So if I'm gonna be really honest with myself, I brought half of my Comfy Slob to this party. But today she was really, for whatever reason, she was really kicking up. And I love that question that you asked, because it's like, what is she trying to keep me? What is she trying to teach me? What is she afraid of? What is she trying to keep me from having to go through? And what's really interesting is Brené Brown always talks about the 2 sides of shame. Mm-hmm. One side of shame is one side of shame is you're not enough, which is where I was before when I started my journey. And I talk about the entire journey in the book, because it's just that I feel like that's the insight of how to get through the tunnel for others. The other side, when you come out the tunnel, that people don't realize is as prevalent, and also something that's going to happen in your life, which is what my current Comfy Slob is doing, is is protecting you from this who do you think you are part of shame.
Oh yeah.
So, Marianne Williamson, a really famous quote that she has where she talks about how, we're not afraid of our light. We're not afraid of our darkness as human beings. This is not her quote, but this is paraphrasing in my language, but as human beings, we're actually really comfortable with darkness, because there's a lot of certainty in it. Okay, yes, I know this causes me pain, but I know how to manage this pain. I know how to numb this pain. I know how to deal with this pain, versus stepping into our light and stepping into our greatness. And so what's interesting is, because I keep thinking of Comfy Slob in terms of like when she's convincing me I don't need to work out. And what's really interesting is I already know, because I experience it a lot how much I trigger people by how much I love life, or how I look a certain way, or how I behave a certain way. I know that I trigger people a lot.
She's going to all these places all over the world.
Yeah. I love life. And I'm always like, how can I love life more? And so I think people, think it's fake, or, and it's not.
Right.
And the thing is that it's almost like my comfy slob is like, oh, let's not give people more reasons to dislike you. Where my highest consciousness self is like, understands better than that. But unless I'm having a conscious dialogue. So do you see, like, we're giving examples for you listening, that your comfy slob will morph as you give yourself permission to have more awareness around how they show up and what's going on and what they're protecting you from. And until I even did this, I didn't realize how much comfy slob is trying to tell me, like, okay, but like, could you just not be so big? Like, don't
tone it down.
Yeah, don't be so awesome. Like, oh, don't be so magical. Like even with the storm and the way that I handled the hurricane that came through, I moved here, and then 4 days later, a hurricane was coming through, and I was like, awesome, I'll make it an adventure. And I got to go to Chicago, and I got to see you, and we got to make new memories. It was an awesome time. So it's just knowing that sometimes comfy slob is also protecting you from your greatness because of the two sides of shame. So paying attention to when you're not feeling like you're enough. Another one we talked about before we started recording was how your comfy slob was doing the why bother syndrome with, right? So like, Erin, do you mind if I share your,
go ahead.
Okay. So Erin, it basically has a 6-pack and is 9 weeks pregnant. And so it's this thing around understanding that before, because her and I were like, no, we're going to do this workout journey together. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be fun. And Erin's comfy slob kept telling me out loud, which I kept being like, stop, that's bullshit. That's bullshit. And she's like, yeah, it is, damn it. But she kept telling me, we're trying to get pregnant. So I don't want to, cause then, and then I'm going to have to, so I'll just
like,
wait.
I can't keep up with it because I'll be pregnant and I didn't work out the first 8 weeks of my first pregnancy.
Yeah. Also, it's like, I'll do it when, I bother working out because I'm going to be pregnant anyways. And then I'll just wait a year. I'll just wait a year and however long until after the baby. And then if that pattern had continued, there would always be a reason to not do it. So anyways, I'm feeling like this is a good point for us to kind of wrap up, because I want to make sure that we're giving good nuggets for people to, take away. Also, that whole why bother syndrome, or the tomorrow syndrome, is another episode that we're going to talk about, just because it totally plays into how to create more awareness around what's getting in your way, so that you can create more consciousness to genuinely create the life that you love living, the body you love being in, and nourishing your mind, body, soul, so that you can get epic, sexy, fit. So anything else that you would like to share before we wrap up and say goodbye for just today?
No, I think that was perfect. I think that what you were saying about the dual definitions, or the dual sides of shame, ties into that my nerd quote in the beginning too, from Obi-Wan Kenobi, just saying that, like, again, the truths that you cling to depend greatly on your own point of view. And so if your point of view is that you're not enough, you can't do it, or you're not worth it, then your truths are all going to feed into that confabulation. They're all going to feed into it, and you're going to find evidence. And so, I've learned that in looking for things, or when I'm doing things, it's like I'm trying to collect evidence. And so, like you're saying with the working out, collecting evidence of like, hey, your body after a baby doesn't have to look like that. Hey, you don't have to fall apart, because I've got evidence against it now. And so it's just starting somewhere and pushing your comfy slob down on the bench for a second and being like, I need you to sit this one out. Just start gathering that evidence, and you're going to start questioning a whole slew of different things and truths, and wondering, is this really the only way?
Yes. Okay. I love that. And then one final piece to add, because this is totally aligned with this, is all of we all have the power to determine whatever meaning we give to ourselves, our worth, our life. And so I love what you're saying. It's like whatever our truth is, our ego will adamantly go out to look for for proof, right? And we can always find one way or the other. It just depends on what we're looking for. We'll find what we're looking for. And I talk about this a little bit in the book, the fact that even when evidence is presented that shows you that your story is, crapola, if you're not ready to admit that it's bullshit, you can't even see it. And yet when you do admit it, what we're sharing, both of us have realized, like when you finally just surrender and say, okay, I'm willing to be more conscious and be more gentle on myself and not judge myself and not shame myself, but just genuinely be curious. I think curiosity is such a superpower. What ends up happening is we can see more possibilities for truths. And it doesn't mean we're wrong. It just means, well, what if there's something else that serves us even better? And so one of the stories I share in the book is when I went to an ENT, an ear, nose, throat specialist, and I shared this with you earlier, Erin, but when I went to him and he basically said to me, because I had been told that I should have the surgery for my sinus cavities, or I should be on steroids or different things that I should be doing, different medications. Which if that was the case, it would mean it wasn't my responsibility. It wasn't my fault. And, this is just life. This is just, this is happening to me and I can't control it. So I go to this ENT and he says, there are a couple things that you would have to do before I would even take you on as a client and, or even think to do surgery or anything else. And he said, one is you live in a basement and there's probably mold in the basement, which is probably causing some of the sinus inflammation. Oh, I also had asthma. And he said, so like that you would need to move. The second thing is you have a dog, and I was getting hives and stuff on my skin because I'm allergic. He's like, you're allergic to your dog. So that's one thing that I would recommend. I still have her. She's still right here, so I didn't get rid of her. But, he's like, so that's another thing that I would recommend that you do. I was smoking at the time. He said you'd have to stop smoking. And then what was the final thing? Anyways, I talk about it in the book. But so there were all these, he was basically offering my power on a silver platter. He was saying, hey, you are the master creator of your life. You can change things that you actually have full power and control to change, and they will dramatically change your outcomes. And hey, guess what? Then you won't need this medication. Then you won't need the surgery. You won't need these things. And yet all I heard was this, like my comfy slob kicked in, who didn't want to have to take any responsibility. And it was just like, no, this guy's a whack job. Go find someone else. And so I went, like you said, and I stuck to my truth, and I went and found another doctor who was like, no, it's totally like, this is just part of your genetics. Like you were born this way. You can't control this. Here's medicine. Right.
Yeah. And
then when I awakened into a new state of mind and was more willing to say, what if I am, what if I am powerful, right? Like, what if I am enough? What if I am the master creator of my life? And I changed my story and I changed my truth and I owned my power. In owning your power, you're also owning responsibility for some of the stuff that maybe is less than desirable in your life, like the weight you have on, or, the fact that people keep asking if you're pregnant. Maybe you have some responsibility in that you can change as well, right? And so for me, what I ended up doing, that was when I was willing to take a look at my truth and really redefining some of my stories that I was telling myself and putting new meanings on life, that was the biggest metamorphosis, because then I was able to say, okay, well, maybe I should quit smoking.
Yeah.
Maybe smoking does have something to do with sinus and, sinus cavities in your lungs and asthma, right? Yeah. And it was like, oh yeah, okay, maybe I should move out of a basement, and I didn't, like I said, I didn't get rid of my dog, but I did all of the things that the guy said. And also, that was the other thing he said. He said, you need to get allergy tested for you're having an allergic reaction.
Yeah.
He wasn't convinced it was, the gene. And I accidentally gave myself an allergy test when you and I did the cleanse. We did at Chris Carr's Crazy Sexy Diet.
Oh, right.
Book. It was just a 28-day cleanse. And when I reintroduced things, which is now that I've studied holistic nutrition, I understand was a reverse elimination diet. When I put things back in, that's how I found out what I was allergic to. So anyway, so just interesting how even when the universe was giving me my power on a silver platter, I couldn't, I had my hands over. I was like, blah, blah, blah. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to own it because I didn't want to own anything that was bad in my life. I didn't want to own the bad relationships. I didn't want to own the bad body stuff. I didn't want to own the extra 35 pounds. I didn't want to own my pain. I didn't want to own any of that.
Yeah.
And so when I really stepped into giving myself permission to think of even just exploring I remember like the last complete asshole I dated, and I was like, oh, the common denominator here is me. And giving ourselves permission to just like step into that, it really changes things. So that's what I would say, for everyone listening, is just giving yourself permission to explore some of the truths that you have that may not actually be serving you, and start to ask yourself, what might I like to believe instead? And then be on a treasure hunt for proof that this new thing you would like to believe is actually true.
Yeah. Well, and I think the thing about like using the word truth or belief too is that like there is a misconception that whatever you believe is set in stone until the end of time. And it could never be any different. And like your whole world is going to be shattered if you find out that something wasn't true. And, there's a lot of people who grow up believing that Santa Claus is real, and not saying that he isn't. But then as you find out later, whoever tells you, that maybe that guy didn't drop off the presents. Like I know a lot of people who grow up into very well-adjusted adults. So there's an example or evidence of a truth that you once believed that didn't hopefully turn your world upside down. So there are plenty of others once you start looking. But the beautiful thing about realizing you're part of your own problem is that you can then be your own solution.
Yes. And also it's like, I'm so grateful for the years where I really believed the magic, and I love behind it. So I think that's such a cool thing, because you're saying, hey, at this stage, this really did actually serve you. Right. And this is the part of why, so Comfy Slob is just one avatar as an example that we're giving you to play with, and we'll give you more as we go through these episodes. The thing is that, it's knowing that what you believe in this moment or believed in the past, it actually did serve you. And that's why it's like no shame, no judgment. It's looking for, how did this serve me? Right? Again, like my Comfy Slob really kept me from having to deal with pain, which, it helped me survive. And I think that's the thing is, I didn't want to survive anymore. I wanted to thrive. And so if you want to have a new outcome, like my boy Albert Einstein, it's like, then you need a new mentality to solve the problem. You can't use the same mentality to solve the problem that you use to create the problem. And so you need to look at truths and beliefs and, and know that at one point, maybe this was magic for you. And now this no longer serves you because you're going into a new era. And so Comfy Slob usually tries to keep you from going into that next level of development. So for anyone who's ready to go to that next level, whether it's your career, your body, relationships, whatever, it's knowing that you're just going to have to get really clear on what's actually serving you and what you want. And a lot of the times, the people that I work with, the reason that they don't accept their power or own their power is because in a way the ego then has to start to rationalize, and it starts to fight the fact that it somehow I as the ego, I somehow was responsible for the pain that I was causing myself or others. You know, like it was a lot easier when, you know, it was my parents' fault that I had shitty relationships.
Mm-hmm.
But like, if I'm going to own my power and I'm like, oh, it's my, like, I have control over this, I have power, then I have to accept I have to like consciously accept everyone I hurt that I ever dated. That was nice, that I couldn't date good guys. So I like they never lasted, or that I consciously chose, well, unconsciously, but you know, shitty partners for the other ones. So there's just something really powerful about, you know, giving ourselves permission to say, what if there's another way? And just getting clear on when your comfy slob is trying to get in your way. And then also saying, hey, today's, you know, whatever day it is, and being like, I don't feel so good, and I'm going to give comfy slob permission to get all up in my shit today. And I did today. And then, like I said, look, see, I did halvesies today.
Yeah, I mean, I love Comfy Slob. She's helped me a lot. And are you going to show it? Oh, there she is. That's cool. See, she gets a foot in the game.
But yeah, exactly, right? Yeah. So she could play. She got to play a little bit today, and then I did. So sorry, I didn't. So
I don't know if you want to end here or not, but I just I love, you know, again, I got to nerd out because that's what I do. But when you're talking about like embracing and appreciating where you've come, the people you've been, your different avatars and how they've served you or how the truths have. For anyone who's a Doctor Who fan, I love Doctor Who, and it's basically a time traveling alien who regenerates and turns into a new being every so often. And so when the 11th Doctor regenerated, he just had the most beautiful regeneration speech, and I loved it. And I listened to it before my son was born because I was, you know, I was turning into a mother, but I think this is perfect for like Comfy Slob or wherever you've been. And he does this beautiful monologue where he says, you know, we're all changing all through our lives. Like, you know, but that's okay. You've got to keep moving. And that's how it's got to be. And so, you know, basically he ends it, and he ends his life and looking back and saying like, I don't regret one day. Like, I don't regret one day I love. I'll have to read it or look it up, but you know, I won't forget one line of this, not one day. I'll always remember when the doctor was me. And so always remembering where you came from and appreciating and embracing that, and knowing that that's okay, that you continue to move forward and you don't have to be the same person.
Yeah. There's so many, we didn't come here to be one version of ourselves, you know, we came here to be, which is why today we're just talking about Comfy Slob, and you've heard us talk about a couple of other avatars that we'll talk about in future episodes. So yes, it's giving yourself permission to also be very grateful for what the safety that it has created unconsciously for you, and now saying, okay, now I'm going to create some new, I'm gonna create comfort in my life more consciously instead of very haphazardly. So, because again, it's comfort, you know, it's a need, right? So it's like, great, how can you create it consciously in a way that isn't sabotaging you? So in the future, just to plant some seeds, we'll talk about the Perfectionista avatar. We'll talk about the Saboteurist, or your saboteur. We'll be talking about Victima, or perhaps if you're a gentleman, Victimo. We'll be talking about the Tomorrow Syndrome and the Why Bother Syndrome. I mean, there are a lot of things that we're just going to give you little playful life hacks. We'll share our stories with you, so you can laugh at us and or with us. Don't really care either way. So yeah, but we just want you to live the best life. And, you know, I feel like people always ask me, you know, why do you do what you do? And my big thing is like, when you find happiness, or when you find something that's like a magical nugget of anything, why the hell wouldn't you share it? And I think that's what's so cool. And our friendship has evolved so much. Now that I don't black out and shabba-doo to you anymore, I legitimately shabba-dabba-doo. You know,
we have plenty of good, meaningful talks though in between that. In between the shabba doing.
Yeah, when I was sober. Yes, that's true. We've had, usually a lot of drinking on my part. But yes, that's true. So yes, we will continue to share our journeys, and it'll be lovely. So, all right, I'm going to stop recording. Erin, stay on. I'll see you later. Bye, guys.
See ya.
Bye.